The battlefield was not a place for questions, it was a place for screams. For broken steel, for smoke that burned the lungs and turned the sky into ash. The war between humans and the Zilari Empire had lasted 3 long years. And this planet was meant to be the final grave for humanity's last resistance. Captain Aaron Halley stood inside a shattered command post. His armor cracked, his hands shaking from exhaustion. Around him, wounded soldiers lay quietly, saving their strength for screams they might never make. Outside, alien war machines moved like shadows through fire. Everyone knew what came. Next. Extermination. That was when the signal came. Not an attack warning, not a surrender demand. Request. All human forces, the translator crackled. Stand down weapons. The Queen of Zilari requests a personal audience. 1 human representative. Laughter broke out. Weak, bitter, almost hysterical. This is a joke. Someone whispered. Or a trap. Another said. Aaron thought the same. Alien queens did not request meetings. They commanded annihilation. Yet the signal repeated. Calm, polite, almost nervous. Against every rule of war, Aaron volunteered. Not because he was brave, but because he was tired of watching his people die. Without meaning, he walked alone into no man's land. The ground was blackened glass. Dead machines smoked quietly. The air trembled as something massive descended from the sky. The Queen arrived. She was taller than any human. Her armor silver and organic, like living metal shaped by a careful hand. Energy wings folded behind her back. Her eyes glowed soft blue, not angry. Not cruel, just deeply old. No guards followed her. That terrified Aaron. More than an army. They stood facing each other in the middle of hell. You are human, the Queen said. Her voice echoing inside his helmet, smooth and clear through the translator. You are not afraid, Aaron swallowed. I am. I just don't have much left to lose. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Weapons on both sides remained silent. Entire armies watched 2 figures stand between life and extinction. Then the Queen asked something that shattered every expectation. Human, she said slowly. Why do your soldiers speak of love while they die? Aaron blinked. What? Her glowing eyes did not leave him. My interceptors record your final transmissions. You do not cry for victory. You cry for names. For partners. For children. For something you call romance. She hesitated, as if the word itself was foreign on her tongue. Explain it to me. The wind howled through ruins. Somewhere far away, something exploded. But in that moment, the war froze. You want to talk about romance? Aaron said quietly. Here? Yes, the Queen replied. I rule 1,000 systems. I command fleets that erase stars. Yet I do not understand this thing that makes humans refuse to surrender. Aaron felt his chest tighten. My people believe romance is a flaw, she continued. A weakness that clouds judgment. I was never taught it. I was born to rule, to conquer, to survive. She stepped closer. Yet your species keeps fighting, even when defeat is certain. And always, you speak of love. Aaron thought of burned cities, of empty homes, of a woman with a smile that once made the universe feel safe. Romance, he said softly, isn't weakness. The Queen tilted her head. Then what is it? Aaron took a slow breath as fire lit the horizon behind her. It's the reason we still stand when everything else is gone. The Queen did not answer, but something in her eyes changed, and the war waited to see what that question would cost. The silence after the Queen's question hung heavy, like smoke that refused to clear. Around them, the battlefield still burned, but neither side moved. The soldiers who watched from their trenches could not believe what they saw, a human standing alone before the most feared being in the galaxy. answering a question no one had dared to ask. Captain Aaron Hawley felt the weight of every life lost pressing on him. He looked at the Queen, at the perfect alien symmetry of her face, at the glowing blue eyes that seemed to measure the worth of his soul. He remembered the voices of his soldiers as they fell, the cries of the dying, the small, quiet wishes whispered in the dark. And he remembered something else, someone who had taught him what it meant to care even when everything hurt. "My Queen," Aaron said slowly, choosing his words as if each one could build a bridge between their worlds. "You ask about romance, but you will not find it in weapons or fleets. You will not find it in strategy or war. You will find it in people who still hope, even when hope is impossible." The Queen tilted her head, curious, almost like a child observing an insect. "You speak in riddles. Why hope? Hope weakens. Hope destroys fleets." "No," Aaron said, shaking his head. "Hope saves us. Hope is why we fight even when our cities burn, even when our friends fall beside us. And love is the heart of that hope." "Love?" she repeated, the word sounding strange on her tongue. She stepped closer, her towering presence casting a shadow over the charred ground. "Explain it to me. How can love matter here, where billions die every day?" Aaron swallowed. He thought of her question, and of the woman he had lost in the first bombardment of the war, the only person he had ever truly loved. Her laugh, her gentle touch, the way she had looked at him like he was the only thing in the universe that mattered. And in those final moments, he had held her hand as fire rained from the sky, and even as she slipped away, the world had seemed a little less cruel. "Love," he said quietly, "is why pain has meaning. When my wife died, I could have given up. I could have let the world end and walked into the fire. But I did not, because I loved her. And because she believed in me, I kept living. I kept fighting. That is what love does, it gives purpose to suffering." The Queen's glowing eyes softened. She did not speak. Instead, she studied him like a scientist observing an experiment that was failing or succeeding in a way she could not predict. Her hand brushed against her chest, over the armor plates that covered her heart. For the first time in hundreds of cycles, she seemed unsure. Her mind, trained to calculate victories and losses, could not understand this human idea. "You speak as if love is more powerful than strategy," she said finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. "How can something so fragile matter against an army?" Aaron looked at the endless ruins around them. Broken machines, burned forests, shattered lives. "Because it is the only thing worth protecting. Empires rise and fall. Stars die. But the people we love, they are the reason we endure. The reason we continue when there is nothing left." The Queen stepped back slightly, as if the words themselves were a weapon that had struck her. She had seen countless worlds burn, countless civilizations crushed, countless victories that should have brought her satisfaction. But she had never understood why humans screamed the names of those they loved in their final moments. And now, for the first time, she began to understand. "So you fight," she said, "not for victory, not for power, but for love?" Aaron nodded, his voice steady despite the fire in the distance. "Yes, that's why we fight. That's why we stand. That's why we survive." The Queen's eyes glimmered with something alien, something unfamiliar. Curiosity. Wonder. Maybe even the faintest shadow of longing. She looked at the human before her, this small, fragile creature with a heart that had been broken more times than she could count, and she realized she had been wrong. The Zalari way was to conquer, to destroy, to calculate. But the human way fought with emotion, with hope, with something she could not touch but could not ignore. The battlefield around them faded into silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Aaron did not notice. He only saw the Queen's face, and for the first time, he realized he was not afraid, not of her, not of death, not of the war. He was only afraid that she might never understand the strength humans drew from something so simple, so fragile, and yet so powerful. Love, the queen finally spoke, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper, but carrying across the ruins like a new dawn. I was not taught this love you speak of. I was taught power, and obedience, and conquest. I was never taught why someone would die for another. Aaron stepped a little closer, his eyes locked on hers. Because love is the only thing that makes us human. It is the only thing that makes suffering worth it. And it is the only thing even a queen can never fully conquer. The sky above them burned in crimson and smoke, but for a brief, shining moment, the war seemed smaller. And somewhere deep inside the queen, a question that had no answers yet began to grow. The battlefield burned with relentless fury. Shells tore through the earth, and fires turned forests into red oceans. Men and women ran for cover, but in the middle of the chaos, Captain Aaron Hawley and the Zalari Queen stood facing each other. Nothing else seemed to matter, neither the smoke nor the screams, nor the endless line of death behind them. Aaron took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He could feel the weight of history pressing down. He remembered every comrade he had lost, every life cut short, every home destroyed. And yet, when he looked at the queen, he did not see a monster. He saw someone who, like him, had been forced to survive in a world of fire and sorrow. "You speak of love," the queen said, her voice calm but questioning. "Yet you fight. You kill, you destroy. How does love survive in the middle of war?" Aaron's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sky was painted red with fire and smoke. "It survives," he said slowly, "because love is stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger than death. Love is why we keep going even when nothing else matters. It is why a human will risk everything for another." The queen tilted her head, clearly trying to understand. "I have ruled thousands of systems. I have seen countless deaths. I have conquered entire worlds, and yet, I do not understand why someone would give their life for another." Aaron's voice caught. He thought of her, his wife. The small, gentle woman who had laughed at his worst jokes and held him when the nightmares came. She had died in the first bombardment, in a city that was supposed to be safe. He had held her hand as she slipped away, whispering promises he could not keep. That memory burned in him, painful but precious, and gave him the words he needed. "Because without love," he said softly, "there is nothing to fight for. You can conquer worlds, destroy armies, and win battles, but if you have no one to care about, what do your victories mean?" My wife, she gave me a reason to stand, a reason to survive. Even when she was gone, that reason stayed with me. That is the power of love. The queen's glowing eyes softened. She had never seen anything like it, not from a human, not from any creature. Her advisors would have called it weakness. Her scientists would have called it irrational. But Aaron spoke with the kind of certainty that only comes from real loss and real devotion. "You speak as if love is more than life itself," she said, almost to herself. "But how can a feeling hold against fleets, against weapons, against death?" Aaron stepped closer, the ground cracking under his boots. "It doesn't hold against death," he said. "It survives death. That's what makes it worth everything. Love is not safe. It is not easy, it hurts, but it gives life meaning. Without it, we are nothing but creatures who eat and sleep and die. With it, we are human, we are brave, we are alive." The queen remained silent. She looked past Aaron, across the field, where soldiers from both sides had paused, unsure why the war seemed suddenly small, insignificant even, in front of this conversation. She saw the humans helping each other, dragging wounded friends to safety, even when the aliens pressed closer. She saw their courage, and she saw their care. And for the first time, she understood something that had eluded her entire life. There was strength in love, a strength that could not be measured by weapons, numbers, or tactics. "Then this love," she said slowly. "It is why your soldiers endure." Aaron nodded. "Yes, it is why they keep fighting. It is why they stand when everything is broken. It is why they survive." He hesitated, then added quietly, almost as if confessing, "It is why I'm standing here, talking to you, instead of giving up. Because even in death, love leaves a mark. And I carry that mark with me every day." The Queen's eyes flickered, a strange mix of curiosity and uncertainty. She had conquered countless worlds, crushed countless lives, and yet, no force in the galaxy had ever shaken her like these words. She had been trained to expect fear, obedience, submission. But she had not been trained to see courage born from love. A shell exploded nearby, showering them with dirt and sparks. Aaron barely flinched. The Queen did not move. And for a brief, shining moment, in the middle of the fire and blood, something resembling peace settled between them. Aaron looked into her eyes and said, "Love is not just about comfort. It is not just about happiness. It is about choosing someone when everything hurts and still standing by them. That is what makes humans strong. That is what makes us worth remembering." The Queen's hand brushed over her armor, instinctively closing around the control mechanisms that governed fleets and death. But something had changed inside her, a question that had no answer yet, a feeling that had no name. And in that moment, Aaron realized something he had never thought possible. The Queen was listening. Truly listening. The war raged around them, but for a moment, it was as if it had stopped. And in that silence, a fragile, dangerous, beautiful truth began to bloom. Love, even in the middle of fire, could survive. The silence could not last forever. Above them, alien warships shifted in the sky, their engines thrumming like a heartbeat of doom. Human artillery crews braced, fingers tightening on triggers, eyes scanning the horizon. Every soldier had heard the Queen's words echoing through the battlefield, but duty did not pause for understanding. War, unlike love, waited for no one. The Queen stepped back, her towering form still glowing with unearthly light. Her wings folded behind her like dark steel petals. For a moment, she seemed uncertain, almost hesitant. But then she lifted her hand, and her voice rang across the field, calm and commanding. "The armistice is over. Engage the humans." Aaron felt his heart tighten. The words were expected, yet they carried a weight heavier than death itself. Around him, humans gritted their teeth, gripping their weapons. They had seen hope flicker in the Queen's eyes, and now it felt cruel to snatch it away. He raised his rifle, but he did not look down the sights. Instead, he met the Queen's gaze. For the first time, he saw hesitation in her eyes, a crack in the armor that covered centuries of conquest. Her advisors barked orders from their hovering ships, but she did not respond immediately. She lingered, as if questioning the very act of war itself. "Why do you hesitate?" one of her generals hissed. "The humans must die. This delay risks everything." "They will not die," the Queen said, her voice soft but firm. "Not yet." Aaron's pulse quickened. Something had shifted. For the first time, the alien Queen was not just a ruler. She was a creature trying to understand, trying to decide between power and something else. Something Aaron could not name but knew must be love. A shell screamed overhead, landing a few meters from where they stood. Dust and debris filled the air. Human soldiers ducked, shielding their eyes. Aaron pressed himself to the ground, but his gaze never left the Queen. She did not flinch. Her armor glowed faintly, absorbing the shockwaves like they meant nothing. Yet her eyes betrayed her curiosity, doubt, something dangerously human. "You speak of love as if it is stronger than fear," she said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Yet you stand in the middle of destruction. How can you survive with such fragility?" Aaron crawled forward through the dust and rubble. His hands were scraped, his armor scorched, but he ignored the pain. Because it is not fragile, he said. Love is what gives us strength. It is what makes a life worth living, a fight worth fighting. Fear is nothing compared to the courage love inspires. Even here, even now, we stand because we care. For a long moment, neither spoke. The Queen's generals urged her forward. The warships roared to life, and yet she hesitated. Her hand hovered over the control panel, fingers trembling slightly. No advisor had ever seen hesitation like this. No human had ever seen a queen who ruled entire star systems pause before a single human. Aaron whispered, almost to himself, "You can conquer worlds, you can destroy fleets, but love cannot be conquered. It cannot be destroyed. It survives because it is chosen every single day, no matter the cost." The Queen's chest rose and fell. Something inside her shifted. She had seen it in his eyes, in the way he spoke, in the quiet bravery that refused to yield to death or fear. She had never imagined that love could wield such power. And for the first time, she wondered, what was the point of victory if it meant understanding nothing of the heart? A final countdown echoed across the battlefield. Both armies tensed. The Queen's voice rang out again, commanding, firm, yet softer than before. Attack. But the words carried no certainty, no cruelty. They were mechanical, spoken out of duty rather than desire. And in that hesitation, the humans found something strange, something that gave them courage. They fired, they charged, they fought with fury, but somewhere deep inside, they knew the Queen was questioning every order she had ever given. Aaron kept his eyes on her as the battle raged. He could see the question forming, like a fragile light. In the storm, could a queen truly understand what humans fight for when it is not power, not glory, not conquest, but love? And in that moment, amidst the roar of war, Aaron realized that something fundamental had shifted. The war would continue, yes, but the Queen was no longer the same. Something had been planted in her, a seed of understanding that might grow. Long after the cannons fell silent, the battlefield burned, screams echoed, and the Queen issued commands, but for the first time in her reign, she did not act without thought. She paused, she questioned, and even in the middle of fire, amidst death and chaos, a single quiet truth lingered in the air. Love, even here, could not be ignored. The war raged on, but the Queen could not focus. She returned to her command. Ship, floating above the battlefield like a silver specter. Her advisors reported casualty numbers, supply lines, and strategic calculations, but she could not hear them. Their words were meaningless. Only one voice remained in her mind, the voice of the human who had stood before her, who had dared to speak of something she could not understand, love. Aaron's words repeated themselves endlessly. Love is why pain has meaning. Love is why we endure. Love is why we survive. The Queen had never thought about survival like that. To her, survival was conquest. To her, life was power and emotion was a liability. Yet now, for the first time, she felt doubt. She could feel it crawling inside her chest like a shadow that refused to be ignored. Love. Humans died for it. They lived for it. They fought for it. And it gave them strength. She replayed the battle in her mind. The human had stood in the open, unarmed by his own choice, staring into her eyes without fear. He had not begged. He had not cowered. He had simply stood. And in that stand, he had shown her something impossible, the courage of love. Her advisors noticed the change. "Your Majesty," one said nervously, "the humans are vulnerable. We can crush them completely." She shook her head. "No," she said softly, almost to herself. "They cannot be crushed." "Not entirely." The advisors stared. "What do you mean?" "Their cities are in ruins. Their armies are fractured. They fight for something you will never understand," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Something that cannot be measured by numbers or weapons. They fight because of love, and that That changes everything." Her words caused confusion among her officers. Many had never heard her speak like this. Some feared it. Some did not understand it. But she did. She could not forget the human who had spoken to her. Every image of him, the way he had looked into her eyes, the fire behind him, the unshakable resolve haunted her thoughts. She retreated to her private chamber, alone for the first time in centuries. Outside, the war continued. Explosions lit the sky like deadly fireworks. But inside, she sat in silence, pondering a single terrible question. Could love be stronger than war? For the first time, she admitted to herself that she did not know. And that admission terrified her. She thought of her empire, of all the systems she had conquered, of all the stars under her control. Everything she had built could be destroyed in an instant. And yet, Aaron had not been afraid. He had stood tall, speaking words she could not refute, words she could not ignore. He had been small, fragile, mortal, and yet in him burned something eternal. Hours passed. She watched human soldiers on the battlefield, tending to their wounded, helping each other even as aliens attacked. She intercepted messages full of prayers, small jokes, promises whispered across the airwaves. And she realized that the human strength came not from weapons, not from numbers, not from strategy. It came from their hearts. She could not forget it. She could not stop thinking about it. It lodged itself inside her like a spark in dry grass, threatening to ignite something she had never felt before. And the more she thought about it, the more she began to question everything she had known. Why do they endure so much? She asked aloud to no one. Why do they continue when all seems lost? The answer was simple and horrifyingly clear. Because they love. That single truth shook her to the core. She had always believed that power was everything. Now she wondered if all her conquests, all her victories, had meant nothing if she could not understand what made humans truly strong. By the time the next battle report arrived, she had made a decision. A quiet, dangerous decision. She would not speak of it yet. She would not reveal her thoughts to her generals. But deep inside, a seed had been planted. A question had been asked, and it had no answer. Not yet. The queen stared out at the battlefield, at the smoking ruins, at the brave, broken humans who refused to fall. She remembered Aaron's eyes, his words, his courage. And in that memory, she felt something she could not name, something both terrifying and beautiful. It was a small thing. A fragile thing. A dangerous thing. It was hope. And for the first time in her reign, the queen wondered if she had been fighting the wrong war all along. The galaxy waited. For centuries, no voice had shaken the Zalari Empire. Entire civilizations had fallen, entire systems had burned, and the queen's word had always been final. But now, something different stirred inside her. Something human. Something Aaron had shown her. Love. She stood on the observation deck of her flagship, overlooking the battlefield that stretched like a scar across the planet. Human soldiers still fought with ferocity, but she no longer saw them merely as enemies. She saw their courage, their compassion, their determination to protect one another, even when all hope seemed lost. Her advisors buzzed around her, frantic, insisting on orders, strategies, and victory. "Your Majesty," one said sharply, "we can crush them completely. Just give the command." The queen's eyes did not leave the battlefield. And what would that accomplish? She asked quietly, almost to herself. They would die, yes. But what would we gain? What would I gain? The advisors hesitated. None had ever heard her question the purpose of victory. None had ever heard her question the way the universe worked. They fight for something we cannot touch. She continued, her voice growing stronger, more certain. They fight for love, and that is stronger than anything we command. Stronger than fleets, stronger than empires, stronger than fear itself. Her words caused a stir across the galaxy. Across countless worlds, soldiers, spies, and diplomats paused to hear her broadcast. Every human listening felt their hearts lift. Every alien within range felt a tremor of confusion and awe. "I am Queen Virelia," she announced. Her voice was steady, commanding, yet filled with something no one had ever heard from a conqueror before: truth. "I have ruled thousands of systems. I have crushed entire worlds. I have demanded obedience. But now I see that I have been blind. I have been strong in body, but weak in understanding. I have ruled through fear, but I have never understood what makes life worth protecting." She paused, her gaze lingering on the battlefield where Aaron had stood. His words echoed through her mind. "Love is why we endure. Love is why we survive. Humans fight not for glory. They fight not for conquest. They fight for each other. They fight for something we cannot destroy, something we cannot calculate. They fight for love." The broadcast went out to every system under her control. The galaxy listened. Some laughed. Some were skeptical. Some trembled in fear. But no one ignored it. The Queen's voice softened, carrying both authority and reverence. "Therefore, I declare an armistice. Not because humans are weak, not because they are strong, but because they have shown me something I never knew, that the heart can be mightier than the sword, that courage can exist without power, that love is the ultimate force in the universe." On the battlefield, human soldiers stopped. They lowered their weapons, unsure if this was a trick. But there was no deception. The Queen's words carried honesty, and it was impossible to ignore. Aaron's voice, in his mind, guided her. Love survives because it is chosen, every day, no matter the cost. She had chosen it now. She had chosen to see humans not as enemies, but as beings capable of greatness she had never imagined. Her advisors were outraged. "Your Majesty, you are surrendering our advantage." "No," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "I am learning it, and I am changing it. Because even empires are meaningless if they cannot understand what makes life worth living." The humans watched in awe. Across the battlefield, they saw the Queen descend from her flagship. She moved without guards, without weapons, as though stepping into their world rather than commanding it. Her presence was still intimidating, but it carried something new: recognition, respect, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of admiration. The Queen addressed the humans directly. "You have taught me what my empire never could. You have taught me that courage is not measured in weapons, and strength is not measured in armies. You have taught me that love is the bravest act of all. And for that, I will not destroy you. I will not erase your cities. I will not take your lives. Instead, I will honor them." A cheer rose from the human ranks, low at first, then louder, until it shook the very ground. They did not cheer for victory. They cheered for understanding, for recognition, for the knowledge that even a queen could learn something from a human heart. And far away, Aaron Hale's memory became legend. The words he had spoken, the courage he had shown, echoed through the galaxy. A queen had listened, had understood, and had changed because of a single human. For the first time, Virelia realized that the galaxy had not witnessed conquest that day. It had witnessed the triumph of the human spirit, the power of love, and the courage to endure when everything seemed lost. And she knew, deep within her, that nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. Years passed, but the memory of that battlefield never left Queen Virelia. Her fleets no longer patrolled with the sole purpose of conquest. Entire systems that had trembled at her name now thrived in peace. And somewhere, deep in the quiet moments of her mind, she remembered the human who had changed everything. Aaron Hall. A memorial had been built on the planet where he had fallen. Simple, unadorned, yet powerful. The humans had placed a stone engraved with his name. Beside it, flowers bloomed bright, stubborn, alive just like the man they honored. The queen stood among them, her towering form gentle and unthreatening. Soldiers from both sides watched quietly, some with curiosity, others with awe. Here was the ruler of an empire who could have crushed humanity entirely, yet she had chosen another path. A path of understanding, of empathy, of recognition that some victories are not measured in numbers, but in hearts. She reached out and touched the stone. Her fingers hovered for a moment, remembering the courage, the words, the fire in Aaron's eyes. Love is why pain has meaning. Love is why we endure. Love is why we survive.